Nvidia is bringing out a 200 watt rack that's going to have immense power in it. I think it's 1 megawatt per rack. So the efficiencies of an AC system today, you have losses of power somewhere in the 20 to 25% range. The projected losses on DC with the new technology, if you stay all DC, your losses are going to be around 10%, or maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. But in general, if you're looking at a 10 to 12 or even 15% better efficiency of your powering your data center or anything that's forever, that's you can see that's a true savings, and that's a lot of money that you'll save over operational costs of that data center. And that's just on the cost side. On the plus side, Nvidia is giving you all that power in a small footprint.
Hi, it's Joshua Feinberg, host of the Data Center Go-To-Market podcast. And today, joining me is Andy Urda. Andy is the VP of Strategic Marketing for LS Electric of the Americas, based in Illinois. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joshua. I appreciate you asking me to be a participant.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you joining me. In the first place, I'd like to start today is you've had a long, expansive career in a lot of areas supporting marketing and sales. What do you see is the biggest struggle, the biggest hurdle that GTM teams are facing today with their go-to-market in and around data centers?
Well, there's lots of struggles. I think the biggest challenge is with the onslaught of new digital tools driven by AI, is to find ones that you could use that work well and are simple to use, because that whole AI thing has changed everything. Even how we do ads, everything is now, it's not about Google search and in your words. Everything is AI driven, so you have to adapt to the new realities that it's out there. The biggest time that I've spent is listening to a multitude of different companies over the past 6 months on what they have to offer. And fortunately, we basically are, we're using HubSpot as kind of our marketing engine, and we're probably in about second gear on that, and there's probably about 100 more gears to go. But we're moving forward with that. We recently also contracted with Zoom Info, and we're also talking to a couple other market research teams that actually have, one of them has a very unique proposition where they can actually give you a window of time when a certain company is actually looking seriously at a certain part of a data center project for like the UL switchgear, and so that's the best time to contact them. So you're not contacting them too early, or in the worst case, you're not contacting them after they've already made a decision, and you miss the opportunity. So in short, I just think there's a lot of lots and lots of tools out there. The key is to try to find one or two that will help you go forward. It still doesn't change the basics of marketing, where you have to do PR, you have to go to trade shows. And the other thing, Joshua, that you and I have talked about, which I do want to explore a few more, is in lieu of some of these trade shows, maybe having more of a local regional event where you try to invite somewhere between 20 to 30 people or so into a room for a couple hours that are the real people you want to talk to, instead of spending $50,000, $100,000 on a major trade show, getting 200, 300 leads. And out of that 200, 300 leads, you only got to talk to maybe 5 or 6 of the real key people you wanted to talk to, and that were attending that event. So I think the tools have changed, but it's just a matter of trying to find out what fits your company's culture good, and also fits your company's budget, because not everybody has a multi-billion-dollar budget for marketing like some of the large companies that are out there, the hyperscalers and that. So we're spending a significant sum on marketing outreach, but it's pales in comparison to what other companies do, like some of our competitors, like Schneider Electric or ABB.
So it sounds like a lot of where you see other teams and just in general with GTM is figuring out where it makes sense to infuse AI, what AI means to your peers in sales, what it means within your own marketing team, what it means to buyers, which is a fantastic segue to our next question is I'm super curious when it comes to AI workloads and just how much more power is going through a data center facility today. How have the last 12 months changed for your overall approach, recognizing that the data center of today looks so fundamentally different than as recently as 5 years ago?
There's that's a great question, Joshua, and I like to. So the history of the data centers, and you talk to any of the people that are basically developing or operational putting them in place, they will tell you that it's a moving target. The technology keeps changing quite rapidly. So what happens is you have a window of maybe 2 to 3 or 4 years to get a data center, started and built and constructed. Well, what you'll find out, what often happens in the case is they can't come up with a standard uh, bill of material or what for the future, and or can have modular units because the technology is changing so fast. The best example of that is what we had a discussion. We actually had a tech talk last week at Data Center World in DC, on the future of data centers going from AC power to DC power. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Is the main one is Nvidia is bringing out an 800 watt rack that's going to have immense power in it. I think it's 1 megawatt per rack, and so the efficiencies of an AC system today, you have losses of power somewhere in the 20 to 25% range. The projected losses on DC, with the new technology, if you stay all DC, your losses are going to be around 10%, or maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. But in general, if you're looking at a 10 to 12 or even 15% better efficiency of your powering your data center or anything that's forever, that's you can see that's a true savings, and that's a lot of money that you'll save over operational costs of that data center. And that's just on the cost side. On the plus side, NVIDIA is giving you all that power in a small footprint. So we expect to see some of that stuff roll out next year, and 28 will pick up. But I think you'll see it hit full stride in end of 28, 29. That you'll see everybody that are building new data centers, and people that are maybe even doing retrofits switch over to DC for the efficiency on power, and then also to have the be able to add capacity to the existing facility with a smaller package from NVIDIA.
So that's really fascinating. So we're talking about really evaluating the relative efficiency. So we're not just talking about the relative efficiency of DC, of batteries over AC, direct versus alternating current. We're talking about the relative efficiency of mass events versus micro events, which brings us to a really interesting topic. How do you educate buyers about the differences between energy efficiency, consumption, and the implications with NVIDIA's future, rack density? How does all that client education, buyer education come into play so that LS Electric's in there early enough?
Well, so since it's so a couple of things, we actually are under full prototype with technology to support that, and the supporting technology is medium voltage solid state transformers, and also we developed DC digital breakers, so to support all that. And we actually have a couple prototypes already in our near our factories in Korea. In fact, we have a solar field by our frequency drive factory, our variable frequency drive factory, that's used majority for VFDs in HVAC. That facility, the solar power is DC, of course. From there, it goes into a battery energy storage system. That's ours. and then this is all kind of combined, controlled. The electronics and the power distribution is kind of going through like a DCE house. If you're familiar with what an E house is, typically, so you have medium voltage, and then it gets moved down to lower voltages throughout the system. So we have a DC to DC converter along with the solid state transformer. We have some vacuum circuit breakers that are all in there. So this is all under prototype testing, and that will actually power the factory that's going to manufacture our drives in Korea. So one of the things, it's up and running right now. It's been commissioned, so I'm hopeful to be able to get some more details on that to share. So that will be a major education, Joshua, to kind of show that here's the technology kind of working. Now, this is not powering a data center, but my point is, it's showing, taking renewable energy from a solar field, and it could be energy from a solar field, wind, micro nuke, and then of course, what we're seeing really, really take off in the U.S. here right now is gas behind the meter. People like Bloom Energy are their business is going through the roof because with some of the regulation changes in the federal government, now the data center developers can kind of basically can make their own microgrids or power generation. So that's a very, very positive thing. So that's helping actually move the ball there. So that's great for natural gas, but it's also great for renewable energy. I do find a little ironic twist in the fact that this is also going to be very positive, not only for natural gas, but very positive for solar and other renewable energy for powering data centers. Um, some of the renewable energy may not be big enough to power a whole data center by itself, but it will be plenty big in many cases to have backup power. Especially if they've set up the system where you have a better battery energy storage system, and in lieu of something like a diesel generator, which seems to be one of the biggest issues the public have about data centers, is you have a backup generator that's got diesel, it's noisy and has fumes. uh, I also find it a little ironic that there's many, many hospitals in many, many towns in this country that have backup generators that are diesel. And I know that for a fact from my services days for Square D. We did a lot of work in the critical care area. So it's interesting. But I would say, in summary, I think the people that we're talking to now are kind of the large companies, the mega guys that already get the idea that DC is going to be the future, and they're really pushing us on how to feed them information when they're already asking for prototypes and things like that. So in the short term, I don't think there's going to have to be a whole bunch of education in the first phase. The second phase, I think we're already seeing the early adopters are lining up to get on the boat with DC. That's the short answer. But I think in general, our education of the early adopters is LS understands where this is going, and we have a path to get there. And as we keep moving forward and growing our capacity and refining the product, we'll be there. I mean, if you just think of one thing that really kind of just really just kind of blows my mind, to use an old term, is that medium voltage, low voltage, I don't care what kind of transformer you have, the technology there has not really changed in over 100 years. And then all of a sudden now we have solid state transformers that we're looking at, that we're going to be bringing to market in the near future. So it's not lost in me what a technology leap that's happening. And to get the capacities, Joshua, to be able to power and handle the power that we need for large data centers, we're moving. You're seeing the same trend that you're seeing in data centers, where they're getting more capacity and power, going from air cooled to liquid cooled. So yes, so actually our next rev of the solid state transformer will be liquid cooled. So that's another major trend. If you're in the liquid cooling business, and you have a venue to get into the data center world, I think that's a good place to be right now, especially if you have some unique products that are very efficient and savings. On the more PR side for data centers, I think the more data centers that can have their own microgrids, Joshua, and their own power plants is another way to look at it, and be able to say, hey, we're not touching the power of your community. We got our own, so you can stay with your ComEd or whoever your power company is. We're fine. In fact, if we think we're going to generate excess power, we'll be able to sell that, put that on the grid. So we're actually lessen the issue for you guys to have power. So I think on a public relationship education front, not so much for LS, but I think the data center world in general needs to educate the public on a lot of the positive changes that have happened over the last couple of years, and will come down the path that will make communities, happy with tax abatement, employment of skilled trades, and good jobs. May not be millions of jobs, but it's going to be, dozens or hundreds of jobs for a data center, depending on how big it is. And then, as from my experience in manufacturing for over 30 years, anytime you have a facility that requires, you know, in and things that come in and out, you're looking at supporting for every employee at that facility. You've got 3 to 5 other jobs in the community that help support that. So there's a support structure. So, and I think the single biggest thing that everybody, and I live in Chicago, so I can complain about this a little bit, is taxes. All right. So if you have a data center that comes in and can help with tax abatements so your taxes don't go up, or boy, wouldn't it be great if they went down? I think that's a phenomenal way to look at data centers. It's not as an evil, ugly building, but it's a building that can be a technical resource for your hospitals, your schools, and in high school, for tech to have better bandwidth. Also, people forget that when every time we have our hands on our phone or in front of a computer, and just like we're doing right now, Joshua, we couldn't do this without data centers being able to, you know, take care of handling the traffic over the internet, right? So it's an important tool to help communities grow and have support. So I, you know, I, actually our education on what we're doing right now is pretty simple, Joshua, because one of the things, we also make utility grade high voltage transformers. We actually have orders out to 2030 right now, for a very, very large dollar amount, uh, going forward. So it's not so much educating people on what we're selling today. It's, hey, do you guys know what you're doing? Is it decent quality? You got good engineering front end support. You got good after sales support. Including commissioning and repair. And all those are the questions that people are more interested in learning about than so much what the technology is. Because right now UL switchgear is pretty generic in many senses of the word. There's a lot of people. If you look at UL switchgear, like for we use Schweitzer on our packages. That's kind of like an industry standard. We make our own breakers. Molded case, and air circuit breakers and vacuum breakers. In fact, one of the reasons why we have very good deliveries is the breaker factory is adjacent to our switchgear manufacturing in South Korea. And to amplify that and even be closer to the U.S. market, we are now making ACBs and MCCBs in Bastrop, Texas, which is outside of Austin. That factory's up and running. It's also are going to be our support hub for the U.S. And we also have a facility out in Utah, which is building medium voltage switchgear And within a week or two, we're going to be actually moving dirt and starting a construction of 100,000 square foot expansion that we'll be adding low voltage UL gear to. So I think today it's on. If people are looking for how fast can I get it, and are you a company that's going to be around in 3 to 5, 10 years? We've been LS has been around 51 years and we are really, really growing fast in the U.S. To give you a data point, when I started 7.5 years ago, the first year we finished up about $50 million in the U.S. Last year we were just a little shy of 750 million, and there is a chance this year, depending on what ships, is we might double that this year, Joshua. So just because of the demand in AI is kind of driving the whole market, but it's also been very, very, very good for us because it's allowed people to take a look at other suppliers when they're talking to the other four major brands, and they can't get uh, you know, uh, a good answer on something, or worst case, I'm not going to throw any names out there, but there's been more than one occasion I've heard of people that have placed orders with some of these people and said and paid upfront money to guarantee a delivery, and then it gets pushed back 2 or 3 times, and that's just very frustrating. Uh, on the counter to that, we had a very large project in Tennessee with a very semi-famous person who's usually in the arena. And that project, we actually got the initial set of gear there in 4 months, and every month after that, we delivered another chunk of that, and got that all accomplished in about a 9 to 10 month range. And that came from Korea, that was on shipping time and on site. That means when I said it was there in 4 months, it was there in 4 months. So currently on medium voltage and low voltage switchgear, we're talking about somewhere around 40 weeks is we're pretty comfortable as giving as a baseline. And that's after we have everybody's agreed to the specs and the drawings have been signed off and we're ready to go. But one of the things we do ahead of that is, even before the drawings are signed off, if we have a pretty good idea on the buyout items that we don't manufacture, we'll go ahead and place orders on those longer lead time items, because some of those are 16 to 20 weeks themselves. So we'll do that, and that helps expedite the process.
Most data center GTM teams are flying completely blind. 83% of your buyer's journey is happening before they even speak with someone from your sales team. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is powered by DCSMI. We've studied over 1,900 industry leaders to build a diagnostic framework that identifies exactly why deals fall apart and revenue stalls. Stop guessing and start benchmarking. Subscribe now to our weekly Data Center GTM briefing at www.dcsmi.com/briefing. Again, that's dcsmi.com/briefing. BRIEFING. Andy, with everything that you're saying, it sounds like you are very comfortable with your sales enablement, sales support for late stage kind of conversations. But increasingly, we're seeing a lot of buyers do a ton of research on generative AI before they ever get to the first conversation with sales, so much to the point that a lot of times 85-90% of their research is done. What are you doing with your GTM playbooks, or what are you seeing that a lot of people that you're competing against are struggling with their GTM playbooks to adapt to this environment, where a lot of times by the time your salesperson meets a facilities manager or utility executive, or by the time you see developers that are frustrated with community stakeholders, what is everyone missing here that you're actively working on trying to remediate?
Well, ours is very simple. Since we're a relatively unknown upstart company in the US, we've only been here since 2012, and our initial major push was all components, not full switchgear. We were, selling automation products like variable frequency drives and breakers, contactors, and that, and we grew that way. But over the last several years, the big push has been to attend a lot of industry trade shows to showcase our product. Um, we're very proud of our design of our switchgear, and I can reference third parties that have said that our product is built a cut above of a lot of others. What I mean that is our metal thickness is thicker. We have metal door handles instead of plastic handles. Just little things that that are you know you know differentiate. A good example is you're buying economy car, or are you buying a luxury car. Not to say our product's luxury, just saying that it has some features that you don't see in some of our competitors. So, and we've done that intentionally to make sure that people realize they're getting a very good quality. But my job is to build the brand, so that's what I'm working on. So um, it's really quite interesting. When I started, I was actually running one of the sales division teams, and then over the last 2 years, 2.5 years ago, they asked me to take over marketing because they realized that we really needed to get our name out there, and also try to build our brand and name recognition so we can attain the position that we're shooting for is to be a trusted advisor to our customers. That's
So,
like the best place to be, you know?
so given that objective, with so many of the stakeholders that you interact with now wanting to learn on their own before they get to a sales conversation, what kind of investments is our LS Electric making in trying to be an active part of that professional development and that learning development so that a competitor of LS Electric isn't the one that's shaping the criteria?
That's a great question. I mean, so one of the things that we're working on is we'll be rolling out a new website later this year, and one of the main things that I asked to have in there would be a online 24/7 365 self tutoring where you can go in and basically learn about from the basics of electronics to the basics of different products to basically what a data center does, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're trying to do. That beyond that, we've also are working with a very smart PR firm that only focuses on B2B, and they have relationships with many technical and trade magazines. So we're getting basically trying to get white papers out and articles and new product releases, those sort of things that we're working on. So people get more name recognition from us. We're still doing your digital ads and print ads in some of the magazines. I mean, right now I think we're every issue of consulting specifying engineering, we have something going on there. We've been doing that for a number of years, but that's not enough. We need to push that out. The other thing we're doing is with the Zoom info, is we're taking a look at a subset of companies that we want to get closer to. So with Zoom info, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. We're by looking up a territory, or by company and somebody's title, we can actually find those people and have an outreach to them and start a conversation and do that. But on the other side of things, just getting the name awareness so people know who they are. And I would say we're having some good success, Joshua, because uh, our web traffic from a year ago, even 2 years ago, is up dramatically. I haven't checked recently, but the last time I looked at it was up about 50x than it was 2 years ago. So we do seem to be having some success in getting the word out, and people are coming to our website, and that's the reason why we want to upgrade the website, because we wanted to make it less clicks to get around, and then also we want to make sure, to your point, that we have more resources for people on there. One of the ones we just discussed yesterday is if somebody wanted to sign up for our newsletter on there. We're going to create a newsletter, and monthly we'll send it out to them, as long as they subscribe to it. If they want to opt out, they can do that. That's how it is. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, because one of the things you want to have with a newsletter is good commentary or good information. So I was going to ask people like yourself, Joshua, if they would like on occasionally, uh, once every couple of months, maybe have some sort of composite, or some sort of trend that you wanted to talk about, and we could put it in the newsletter. So I think that would be, as an independent third party, and something. In this case, we would of course be focused on data centers,
Yeah.
and I don't foresee us letting off the gas pedal on focusing on data centers for some time. That seems to be where the demand is the hottest right now.
Andy, coming from a sales leadership background, what do you think sales teams most misunderstood? What are they missing out on how buyers are making decisions today? Where do they need the most help transforming, modernizing their strategy to adjust to how buyers have changed?
Um, that's a really good question, and I think the problem with some salespeople is they don't realize that when they get a lead, that lead, if it is, even if it's partially qualified, it needs to be followed up as fast as possible. The leads are very much like like a fresh fruit. If it's not eaten while it's fresh and ripe, it very soon is going to spoil. So the problem is, if you're a busy salesperson and you get 25 leads from a trade show, yeah, and you don't follow those up promptly, you probably, out of that 25, you might have had one or two that might have been really excellent leads. And by the time you get around to following them up, they may have already made a decision, or in, very, very much in the middle of a conversation with a competitor, and really are heading down that path, and you've kind of lost your window there at that time point. So on the marketing side, what we're trying to do is we've changed our whole outlook. I've had some rather stern discussions with our marketing people in Korea, to explain that the metric that we have for trade events is not quantity of leads. It needs to be quality of leads. So what I am committed to doing for our sales team is getting better qualified leads in their hands, not sending them 50 leads that are not qualified, and they need to try to sift through that to see what it is. So fewer leads that are better quality are much better than a bunch of unqualified leads. And and I just saw this at Data Center World last week. I'm trying to think of the name of the company. Anyway, the name of the company doesn't matter. I don't want to embarrass them. But anyway, they had, I believe, 4 or 5 very nice looking young people, that all they were doing was, as you walk by, may I scan your badge? That's all they were asking. They just wanted, that's the mindset of just quantity of leads.
It's pretty funny because I put out a newsletter about a week or two ago ripping into the vanity metric of badge scans and what it actually means, and how there's this cult of still worshiping the badge scan. I know in our research of 1,900 go-to-market leaders, we found across the board a lot of companies are struggling with access to decision makers. Is that something that your team has found challenging? And if so, what are you doing to help them get access to the economic buyers?
I think the key is really, is focus on the quality leads. So if the lead is an engineer, but they're going to get you to, and today it's a matrix decision. And especially in large companies with if you look at a Meta or whoever, they've got a group of people that are working on these projects, and not one person is going to make the decision. So you have to basically have multiple discussions and have meetings with multiple people to kind of get them on board and make sure their questions get answered and you feel comfortable. In fact, to that point, and it's an ongoing relationship. So we just last week we had a discussion with a company that said, "Hey, that was referred to us from a friend of a friend," and they came in and they said, "Well, I have a company I work with because they buy our product that needs help on data centers." So we had a web conference yesterday, and on Tuesday next week they're going to be in our booth at IEEE in Chicago. And that's three of them. Okay. Now the web conference I believe there was about 8 people on their team that was involved in that. So the key, it's great they get a referral from somebody that they know and trust. That's probably the best. But then the key is to make sure that um, you don't go, you don't ask for the order before you made sure that all their questions are answered. So those are really, really important things.
Yep.
The other thing too is on the sales side, I can't stress enough that competence on knowing your product and also knowing the needs of your customer in the marketplace is probably the most important. I actually prefer salespeople that can evolve to be business people. And why I say that is I had that epiphany many years ago myself, that not every customer is a good customer. And that, if you're selling something and the company's not making a reasonable profit, or God forbid, you're losing money on it, and how they can lose money, you could sell it at a great price. I mean, make some money. But if let's say it's a small customer and they're tying up your technical support team every day with questions, is that really a great customer to have? No. I'll put it this way: when you have a large customer that's spending a lot of dollars with you, and they're kind of a bit of a pain in the backside, that's okay, because they have the right to be that way, because they're committed to you with monetarily, with a big chunk of money. So one of the first things I did on the sales side when I came to LS is I looked at the customer base and I said, we have far too many small customers. We need to refer these to to our growing distributor channel, and that's a win-win for us, because we won't be processing as many of these small orders, and we're also referring them to customers, distributors, and that builds the relationship. That had initially a lot of headwind, because these are guys we started with, they're going to be really mad at us if we tell them they can't buy from us anymore. So yes, did
Segmentation.
some of them stop buying from us? Yes, but I would say that the 80/20 rule panned out pretty well, that 80% of them stayed with us and they're buying through distribution. And our customer service and our salespeople could focus on uh, bigger fish to fry. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I
Yep.
100% agree. A lot of people think there is a decision maker. We know it's a committee now. We know it. Trust is the first cousin of education. If they don't trust you, you're going nowhere fast. And across the board, we're seeing industry-wide sales professionals getting way, way more technical. That's why we see a lot of career IT professionals, a lot of career engineers being hired into sales roles, even if they've never been in a sales organization before. Andy, the final area I want to ask you about today is where you see the future headed for both your role as a marketing leader, as well as where the data center industry is. When you look into your crystal ball with 2, 3, 4 time horizon, where do you think we're going?
Well, I think it's on my role. I'll just start there. So I'm in the fourth quarter of my career. Not quite to the 2 minute warning, but we're getting there. So I've have very fortunate to be able to take a look at over decades of things. I still remember when when the first computers came out and we started to use those. I still remember when the fax machine came out, and one of the cool, and this is kind of a sales story, but it also refers to marketing. But if you look at technology, if you go all the way back to the telegraph, the story was when the telegraph was invented. The rumor was, oh, we won't need salespeople because our customers will just telegraph the order in. Same story came about with the telephone, and then the fax machine, and then email. And so now we have AI, which can have agencies, and it can do some things. And some of the things I think it can do are great. Some things that it could do maybe are scary. And will that replace some jobs? Yes. Just like the telephone operator that used to patch in the phone calls got replaced by automation. So I think people that are willing to adapt and learn how to use AI tools in marketing or sales or any job, I think they're going to be okay. I really do, because I look at my hope is that AI is the digital assistant that I've always wanted since they took away the admins at a company I was at, 20 years ago. And they said, here's your software package you can use. You don't need an admin anymore. I'm like, oh, this is great. Now I have to spend X amount of time using this instead, when I could just ask, somebody to do something for me, which took like 2 seconds to ask it versus, using the software, which, especially initially, you always have a learning curve. So that wasn't exactly as easy as thought, but a digital assistant, you could actually automate some things. From my background coming out of automation, I think it's wonderful. So I think just being able to figure out what tools make sense to use, because we're in the wild west phase of AI. So there's going to be a lot of shakeup. There's going to be a lot of merging. So we just have to see what makes sense. On the AI data center world, we're in a huge boom right now, but that boom is going to slow down someday, right? I mean, it will. So I mean, it's still going to continue to grow, but it will slow down, and you're going to see, I believe, some fierce competition in the marketplace after that. So the companies that are established and well positioned and actually manufacture a lot of their own product will, I believe, have an edge over regional producers that buy product and assemble product for companies. I'm talking specifically about data centers, because if you think about it, if you have a factory and you're making product and you're building switchgear, you're going to want to feed that factory that's making the switchgear with your products that you're making. So you're going to get aggressive, I think, going forward. So I think that is going to put a lot of pressure on the smaller players to survive. Because what we've seen, Joshua, in the last couple of years is a whole bunch of panel builders that never built UL switchgear in their life before, but have made the leap to go there now. And some of them have made massive commitments by opening up new facilities and buying a lot of equipment, metal, lasers, for metal cutting and other things. So I think that's going to be it's going to be interesting to see if they can find a way to adapt and survive. For companies like LS, we've been able to kind of move and pivot into the data center world pretty well. Before that, we were building switchgear that went into EV battery facilities in the U.S. Um, there, I think there's always going to be a need for switchgear. I think the thing that I really want to put a finger on, I think I would be willing to bet money on that the future is microgrids. If you look at where things are going, microgrids don't just have to be there for data centers, but they'd be a wonderful thing for hospitals. They'd be a wonderful thing for government buildings, colleges. And I live in a small condo facility that's a 100-year-old building that has 7 units. I think a microgrid for this building, or a microgrid a couple of the buildings in this area would be a great thing to have in the future to kind of give energy independence to to institutions and in towns and stuff. And I think that coupled with renewable type of energy is really going to help third world countries, grow up. So, Joshua, have you ever been to India?
I have not.
Okay, so I was fortunate enough to go to Bangalore, India, which is has a nickname as being the Silicon Valley of India because a lot of it, they have a lot of engineers there, and a lot of them get contracted out to companies all across the world and a lot in the U.S. And I was there, and routinely about 4 times a day the power would drop and the diesel generator would kick in because their grid infrastructure was so weak in that area. And this is a major city with millions of people, millions and millions of people. I forget what it is. So my point is that they're going to build. If you look at India, they get a lot of sun. So if they decide to use solar or whatever, they're going to be able to build a grid resiliency that will give them, world class, type of power. And I think that's what we're going to see in the future is microgrids allowing more energy independence for all types of companies and peoples and facilities. That's
Andy,
my
that's
last.
that is such a fantastic, exciting place for us to be in, and it's a great opportunity for us to lead the charge with being the ones that are educating the industry about all of these possibilities. On that note, if someone wants to connect with you or follow what you're working on and learn more about LS Electric USA, is LinkedIn the best place to start?
LinkedIn is the best place to start. I actually reply to people that contact me on LinkedIn. Uh, some people want to sell me financial services. I'm set with Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase. I don't need a financial advisor, but if you're interested in learning about LS or data centers or anything at all, I'm happy to do that. And I, I think that we're in a very interesting time in the planet. Hopefully, we can get past some of the regional conflicts that are going on and in focus on getting energy independence for a lot of people. Because if you look at what's going on today with the Strait of Hormuz, if we had more microgrids in place and energy was more plentiful, then we'd have less dependence on petroleum, even though petroleum is still used to make many, many products that we use every day. So it's not going to disappear anytime soon.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Andy. Really appreciate it. I've been speaking with Andy Urda, who is the VP of Strategic Marketing for LS Electric in the Americas. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Most data center GTM teams are flying completely blind. 83% of your buyer's journey is happening before they even speak with someone from your sales team. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is powered by DCSMI. We've studied over 1,900 industry leaders to build a diagnostic framework that identifies exactly why deals fall apart and revenue stalls. Stop guessing and start benchmarking. Subscribe now to our weekly Data Center GTM briefing at www.dcsmi.com/briefing. Again, that's dcsmi.com/briefing. BRIEFING.